Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Disney animated film Moana. In Moana, you guys, it's about a girl who's growing up in the South Pacific, and she lives on an island where the people really don't get off the island too much. They kind of stay there and are willing to go up to the reef within the ocean, but as far as going past the reef, they do not go past it very often. And the islanders are starting to get to the point where they almost have to leave the island for certain things because they're starting to run out of resources. They're starting to run out of places to get fish and coconuts because anytime they do get them, they are either already dead or they're not fresh anymore. The coconuts, when they open them up, they're full of dust and this black chars stuff. So it gets to the point where both Moana herself and her family and the people who live on this island have to start looking into other resources. And they're through information from her grandmother, who is definitely someone on the island who was never really a strong supporter of the island's ways. Like she was kind of like Moana is always, um, looking into the ocean and wanting to figure out what exactly is past the reef and what exactly is beyond this island and what exactly is out in the ocean and the far beyond and so forth. And so what they do is they eventually send Moana out on this journey where she has to find a demigod known as Maui, who in the urban myth of her village um, was kind of this guy that kind of limited things. Like he had this huge fight with this other bigger god at one point that limited the island's resources. So it got to the point where they'll be good for a long time, but then after a while things will expire and so forth. So she has to find this demigod known as Maui to be able to track down this other bigger lava god of sorts. So that way her island can get those resources back and have unlimited resources as far as life is concerned. And so that way, Maui can forever take down this other god that he was always meant to take down himself as well. So it was kind of a win-win situation where Maui can finally become the demigod that he's always wanted to be, and the island can always have their resources that they always were planning on having for themselves before figuring out that things were going to expire and have a deadline of sorts and things like that. So this is all about Moana going on this journey, learning about this demigod so that this demigod can finally live up to the myth that he's supposed to live up to as well. So overall, guys, I really liked Moana a lot. I don't think it's Disney's best film. It's certainly not another, like Zootopia, like it was earlier this year. It's certainly not, as good as some of the really good Pixar films like Toy Story and Finding Nemo and so forth. And it's certainly not as good as like The Lion King or anything like that. Their signature movies in a way, but I really liked Moana a lot. I think it's a very enjoyable movie. It definitely is a very culturally beautiful film for those who want to learn more about like the South Pacific or even Hawaii. Like if you're really fascinated like that, like I am, because I remember when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I went on a trip to Hawaii with my family, and it was very good. It was a lot of fun, very beautiful views and so forth. Um, so Moana definitely is about all that, and I really like that about it. But like I said, it's a really enjoyable adventure that does have a couple of problems along the way. But for my positives and negatives of Moana, there really is some outstanding visuals here that really does show the beauty of the South Pacific and even the Hawaiian culture at some points as well. Um, so really good visuals here. Really enjoyed what Disney did with that. It almost felt realistic at times too, with like the hair and the sand and the water and so forth. So really good visuals in this movie. Also, the characters of Moana, Maui, and the grandmother, I think, are the really strongest characters in this movie. I thought the three of them really had interesting backstories and really interesting ways of viewing life and life on the island and so forth. So those three characters really nailed in this film. Very interesting characters. I also liked how the Moana movie really made the ocean a character in the movie as well. How Moana possesses this stone where the ocean can move her along and grab her and point her to things that she needs to go in and so forth. And like whenever, like for example, when Maui pushes her off the boat, the ocean can pick her back up and put her back onto the boat, so she'll still be on the boat with Maui and so forth. So I liked how the ocean truly became a character in this film. Very interesting take on how to handle an ocean in a movie. So I thought it was interesting how Disney came up with that idea to not only move the film along, but to add another interesting character within this cast. This film also expresses the beauty of, like, the South Pacific culture, the Hawaiian culture, places that have really good tropical weather and so forth. So this film really does express the beauty of embracing such environments like that. And also the character of Maui, who's voiced by Dwayne Johnson, he has these tattoos on his body that tell stories about himself, his past, how he was meant to do certain things that he still hasn't accomplished yet. And I thought it was very interesting. It was a very interesting way to not only move the story along, but for us to learn about the Maui character even more, how he is the way he is, and so forth. He even had a little tattoo here throughout the movie that would interact with situations and react to how he was doing certain things and how Moana was doing certain things. So it was just a very interesting way to handle that character, I thought, and a very interesting way to incorporate a tattoo onto a character without just placing it on the character. It really interacted with what the character was doing throughout the movie. And I really think this film is going to be a big hit amongst little girls. I think a lot of little girls who see this movie are really going to fall in love with Moana and want to grow up to be Moana and so forth. And that's really good. That'll teach them independence and to really strive for their goals and to take risks every once in a while and so forth. So I really liked how this film really is trying to aim for um, little girls to be independent and so forth. So I think that's a good thing for families for this movie, and I really think a lot of people are going to look up to this Moana character because she really is a really neat lady as we watch her throughout the course of this movie. For my negatives on Moana, I really think there's some hit and miss humor in this movie. There's a lot of humor in this movie that really does hit when it works, and there's a lot of humor that kind of misses when it's supposed to work. So there's some humor here where it works, but other times where it just doesn't work very well. Or they'll repeat the same joke from earlier, and by the time they repeat it, it's not as funny as it used to be. There's also some occasional distracting musical numbers in this movie. For the most part, when it's a musical, it works, but there's some musical numbers where it's not so much the song they're singing as much as they bring up that song at the worst possible time in the story. So for me, that's what made it so distracting at times, is they brought up the musical number when I really wanted to focus on the story, and they brought it up at the worst possible time, and they go along and do it anyway. And there's also some moments in this movie where Moana and Maui are on this boat for really long periods of time, and at some points it gets really dull just because they're just kind of either just sitting there or they're picking on each other. And for me personally, it didn't move the story along really well whenever the film chose to go that route. So as far as being on the boat with just Moana and Maui, I thought certain parts could have been handled better because there's some scenes here where it really does feel a little dull at times. And I also didn't like how certain characters went unspoken after a while. There's one point in the story where Moana's parents get completely dropped off from the story. We almost never hear from them again. Once she's on her journey, we almost never hear about them. We never know what's going on the island and so forth. And I really think that was too bad because they seemed like interesting characters that really were good mentors for Moana herself. And I would have liked to have those characters have a voice throughout the entire film rather than just the first act of the movie. And that also goes for her pet pig. In the marketing of this film, they really push for the pet pig and the rooster to be the comic relief. Unfortunately, just the rooster is the comic relief, and the pig is just there towards the beginning of the movie, and we really don't see him until towards the end of the movie, unfortunately. So 8.5 out of 10 for me for this movie. I think it's a very good movie, but like I said, it's a very well-made film that happens to have a couple problems with it. So I do like Moana a lot. I am going to recommend it, but at the same time, they'll go into Moana knowing that it's not going to be this huge Disney classic that films like The Lion King managed to become.